This is Artful Discourse, your weekly escape into the vibrant world of creativity, culture, and intellectual exploration. I'm your host, Benjamin Kirk, and I invite you to join me on a journey through the rich tapestry of human thought and the beating heart of artistic expression at Fresno State's College of Arts and Humanities. A few weeks ago, we welcomed Dr. Veena Howard to talk about the dedication of the Nelson Mandela Monument in the Peace Garden, and dove into the study of nonviolence and the impact it had on one veteran student. Today, we welcome her back, along with her student, Morgan Poulter. Dr. Howard and Morgan traveled to the University of Oxford in England for the Oxford Centre Animal Ethics Annual Summer School that happened on August 5th through August 8th. So welcome, Dr. Howard.
Thank you.
And welcome, Morgan.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Morgan, what is your major and when do you expect to graduate?
So I'm double majoring in psychology and philosophy, and I'll be graduating in spring of 2026.
So why the combination of those two?
So I really think that they build on each other in crucial ways. Like, to have a psychological background underpinning philosophical questions feels very important, and then vice versa. To have philosophical concepts guide psychological research and make them meaningful and significant is very important to me.
So it's the science informing the arts,
Mhm.
or the humanities side of things, and the humanities informing the
Exactly.
science. Yeah. What are your plans after graduation?
So I plan to go on to graduate school and get my master's or PhD in philosophy to become a philosophy professor.
And I see this makes Veena very proud.
Very proud. Very, very happy.
All right. So this conference, it was a big deal. You, an undergraduate, were presenting at an international conference at one of the top universities in the world. At least according to the U.S. News and World Report rankings, it's usually in the top 5. And this was in person, so not over Zoom. Were you the only undergraduate?
Yes, I was.
Only undergraduate presenter
Mm-hmm.
from Fresno State at Oxford University.
From our own Fresno State.
All right, so we'll get back to the conference in a couple minutes, but Morgan, I just want to ask you, how was the trip? Was this your first time traveling outside of the United States?
Yeah, so this was my first time traveling internationally, going to England, and this whole year has been my first time traveling in a lot of ways. So I went to the APA conference earlier this year, my first time traveling to Portland, Oregon, and then in May I went with Dr. Howard to the East and West Philosophers Conference at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, and then now in August going to Oxford for this university.
All very cool places.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was Oxford? Was there anything that stands out about the place? Anything you weren't expecting?
Yeah, it was just very beautiful. The scenery, the environment was very lush and green, well cared for.
The presentation itself, how did it feel as an undergrad at Fresno State to be presenting to basically a global audience of experts from 19 countries around the world who all gathered to talk about animal ethics? How did that feel?
It was amazing. I feel very lucky to have gotten this opportunity, and I am so appreciative of how kind and supportive everyone around the conference was. I mean, obviously it's about animal ethics, so you can expect people to be very compassionate and empathetic, but yeah, just very little anxiety, surprisingly, for my first ever presentation at a conference this big. Everyone was just very generous that it felt so comfortable.
And Dr. Howard, you were the co-presenter, so your perspective.
Yes, of course. She was a star. So, how I prefaced our conversation or presentation introducing Morgan. So it's her first time internationally going anywhere and then attending this conference as an undergraduate student. And everyone just cheered on. It goes, yo, you got this. So it was really wonderful. And we practiced quite a bit. I was traveling abroad and I will call her on Zoom and we practiced a couple of times. And then when she arrived at Oxford, we did a couple of runs to make sure we were timing ourselves. And because we were going first, we really inaugurated the conference We were the first ones. So, that was a little nerve-wracking because of, you want to make sure things go right and smooth. I was more nervous than Morgan was because I wanted to make sure that everything good, but it just went really well.
That going first is can be a little bit of a blessing, but also a little bit of a curse because you don't know how people are going to react.
That's right. That's right. The first is harder, second or third on the panel works, but we were the first. So, but it went quite well.
And why do you think that was? Do they want you to set the tone for the conference?
Yeah, I asked Professor Claire Lindsay. I said, why are you putting us first? We're just traveling from the U.S. We have jet lag, and you're putting us at 9 o'clock in the morning. And she said, because your content, your topic is so philosophical and such a strong content that you have Jain, Hindu, Buddhist, and Gandhi's philosophy with regard to animal ethics. So it's really we want to set the tone of the conference through this paper.
So your joint presentation, the title's a little bit long, which is tells me it's a philosophy paper. It's Gandhi's complex views on nonviolence towards animals and the not so nonviolent response of his fellow Jains and Hindus. So, Morgan, tell me a little bit about the presentation.
Yeah, so my part of the presentation was doing the contemporary and modern analysis of Gandhi's nonviolent treatment of animals after Veena sets up the historical and contextual Gandhian philosophy.
Veena, I think many of our audience members have likely heard of Hinduism, but Jainism is probably less known. Can you explain the views of nonviolence or violence on animals in the Hindu and Jain traditions?
That's a great question, Ben. So Jainism is a religion which was originated in India over 3,000 years ago. It's one of the ancient traditions. They don't even know how old it is. Historical records go beyond history. Um, and the one thing about Jainism is the total respect for all living beings. Before we even knew the idea of animal hospitals or veterinary education, Jains had animal hospitals in 2nd century BCE. So the care for animals, the care for non-human beings has been a part of their tradition. So of course, Hinduism also is very aware of her soul in all living beings, humans, animals, birds, fish, all kind of animals. That's why India is one of the countries has the most vegetarian people in the world
Mm-hmm.
because the nonviolence to animals is very important part of their ethical system. The Jains go even to great extremes sometime to not even um, try not to ingest any microorganisms. So some Jain monks will wear masks on their faces, on the mouths, in order to have no living beings coming into your mouth or nose directly. So the fact that we started this with this paper on Jain, Hindu, and Gandhi was very poignant, very important for the audience who were speaking about figures who have been historical figures who have dedicated themselves to the care for animals all over the world. Ours was the most ancient traditions because Jainism is, like I said, over 3,000 years, and so is Hinduism. And Gandhi was influenced by all two traditions, both of them. But as our title suggests, that Gandhi was a little more practical. So because he lived in the West,
Mm-hmm.
so he was more into his care for animals required also compassion for animals in a way. So Jains won't have animals euthanized,
Right.
but Gandhi would have one of the calves in that, but gave the story of euthanized because he had injured itself. So it was quite interesting the response of the audience, and Morgan comes in and sees. She brings in the perspective what the modern animal ethics talks about how to treat animals and how Gandhi's views fit in that. So it was quite well. Mine was philosophical, ethical, theoretical. Her was more applied, animal ethics in the contemporary field of animal ethics.
So the Jains, um, they are really against harming animals in any way, down to insects,
Correct.
or microorganisms, is what you're talking about. And what about Hindus?
So Hinduism also has great care for animals. Animals are not harmed in the way we see in the West.
Hmm.
Nevertheless, the Hindus have not gone. Hinduism does not go to the extremes like protecting microorganisms. Yes, you live a very life that's very careful, and especially the monks and nuns live a very, very careful life. But like I said, the Jainism has influenced the whole Indian subcontinent religious tradition. So Hinduism was very influenced by Jainism as well. So Hinduism sees soul in all beings. So if you're harming a cow or harming a monkey or harming any living being, you're harming the divine being. So you're supposed to be very careful.
All right. So I have the question, what about Gandhi, which you kind of answered. What are his views on violence or nonviolence on animals in general? But how did his views, which he was a little bit more pragmatic about it, um, can you explain where they differed? And I know you brought out three examples in the paper, but I wonder if you could just kind of, before we get into those three examples, just kind of like what was the basis for his, was there a basis for his difference between those religious
There
traditions?
was a basis for his difference. So Gandhi was very influenced by Jains and Hindus alike. He was raised in Gujarat, which is the hub of Jain traditions. His mother went to the Jain temples and he was exposed to the nonviolence called ahimsa. And his idea of nonviolence, he's known to the world for his strategies and practice of nonviolent activism, included not harming any living beings. So he became vegetarian. He was always vegetarian, but as a child, he started to eat meat and then he became completely vegetarian and vegan eventually. But then he started drinking goat's milk because he was nearly died. So he,
Mhm.
he made this kind of adjustment in his diet. But the idea was non-harming to all beings.
Mhm.
But then he theoretically he defines nonviolence as love and compassion. So now when you say compassion, then the my examples that come into the in my paper, our paper, Morgan and I, they come into play.
Right, and so those examples are really good, and they really do exemplify compassion. The first is euthanizing a calf. Uh, the second is killing of rabid dogs, and the third is the cow slaughter prohibition. And we'll get into that. Well, that one's maybe a little bit more complex, I think.
It's more
Yeah,
complex.
Mhm.
but let's start with euthanizing of a calf.
So Gandhi's ashram had a calf. He had cows and had a calf and fell and got paralyzed,
Hmm.
completely couldn't move, in so much pain. And Gandhi consulted a veterinary doctor, and they said, "It's no hope. That it will slow death, or you have to euthanize him." And Gandhi decides to euthanize the calf. And there was a big protest by Jain communities. It's in the newspapers. It is.
Hmm.
You have evidence where Gandhi is taking action through his emotions rather than rationality. Because according to Jainism, each life has to fulfill their karmas before they go to next life and better life. So they think that through this pain, the calf might have exhausted its karmas, actions, results of action that we get caused by those, pain and suffering, and then would have had better life. So why did he cut it short? But I think the Jainism also have made more adjustments since then.
Yeah.
So I think it has more. So those were Orthodox Jains. So just to
Hmm.
qualify, and those were really letter of the law. That is, and they were not thinking they were thinking compassionate toward the calf rather than saying, "Oh, let him suffer." No, it was the opposite of it. Let it run the karma course run, and that the calf can have a better life. So it was comes from the place of compassion for the journey of the soul while the body was hurting. And Gandhi was looking at more practically.
Okay, killing of rabid dogs, and that had to do with a rabid dog attacking people in the village,
Yes,
right?
exactly. And Morgan does a good job in explaining that one when you explained that why Gandhi would say it's okay to kill rabid dogs.
Yeah, so luckily with Gandhi's reasoning behind that is that it's not anthropocentric in nature because he claimed that it was the compassionate decision to kill the rabid dog, not only because it was going to harm humans, but also because it was harming other animals.
Mm-hmm. And when I thought of that too, I kind of thought of the what about the fox attacking the livestock or the lion attacking a village? Would that fall into that kind of the same things or not? Is there a distinction between that?
So that's India, the very large number of people each year are killed by snakes,
Mm-hmm.
and the snake killing is prohibited generally. So we had cobras in our house, and one time they just invaded, and we never killed it. We had snake charmer come and take them alive. But that's a culturally, we don't just kill things. Like in America,
Mm-hmm.
just step on the spider, step on the cockroach, and just the first thing we do, just step on things and shoot things. And, this is not part of the culture. On those cases, I would say that the example I can give you is some menacing monkeys, that monkeys were destroying the crops near Gandhi's ashram. And monkeys are considered also divine incarnations, so you're not supposed to harm them. So Gandhi had his people have bows and arrows to shoot to scare the monkeys, not kill them.
Mm-hmm.
But then Hindu and Jains had a big protest against Gandhi for, you know, acting out of his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So because he was not, the monkeys are supposed to be holy and sacred, and why are you harming them? So generally, people are not, we don't have dogs that are protecting like America. You have blue healers and all those dogs, and that doesn't exist. And, you know, the kids get stolen by, monkeys used to menace our house all the time. We never thought about killing them or hurting them even. It's all the time they came and opened the refrigerator and ate things, and then we just chased them away.
All right, so I feel like with each of these examples, we could really delve into it a little
We
bit
can have
further,
a
but
paper for each.
right. But let's move on to cow slaughter because that one's a little bit more
Tricky.
tricky. Right. And actually, the last one's a little tricky too. But
They all are tricky.
so Gandhi's dilemma of animal violence. So speak to that a little bit.
So toward the end of when the beginning of India's independence project, there were two communities are living in India: Hindus and Muslims. Major communities. They're all different traditions. So cow is holy for Hindus and Jains, but not holy for Muslims. They can eat beef. So many Hindus proposed to Gandhi that we should ban cow slaughter in India because it is right thing to do. And Gandhi was for nonviolence anyways. And Gandhi said no. He said, I got 50,000 letters to trying to persuade me to take the stand that we should ban cow slaughter. And he had written many articles on that because he was all his life trying to build Hindu Muslim unity,
Mm-hmm.
that you are safe in this country. So he said that we are a secular country. If we are banning the cow slaughter, then we should might as well ban all animals slaughter. Why have goats are okay and lamb eating is okay and chickens are okay? In his mind, all animals are sacred. All animals have souls, so we should protect all.
It seems strikingly similar to me, at least, in the maybe freedom of religion in our own country, where it's we're supposed, at least supposedly, there's always the battle around it, but it's a secular nation with different religions that are able to operate under their own rules. Is that kind of the essence of it in a way?
Correct.
Okay.
He said it's a secular country, respectful all religions, according to
Yeah.
him. And then he's also brought it up quite a bit. So I will analyze in my paper, which I'm working right now, because the presentation we didn't have time for more than 18 minutes. So we didn't go deeper into, you know, Indian cows, he said, if you don't want to kill, how do you treat your cows? So what people do generally don't have means to take care of a cow who is not giving milk anymore, like our elderly
Mhm.
parents, elderly animals. They let them go in the streets and they run around, roam around, sick, sometimes get, eat plastic. Or he said, if you really want to take care of cow, let's talk about that. Then completely take care of the cow. So he was calling on religious hypocrisy in all traditions, that how we take one thing stand, like in our country right now, I feel that there's such a hypocrisy about certain things, about right to life and where we have right to life and where we don't have right to life, where we think it's okay to take life, but it's such a hypocrisy and not many people call it out.
Mhm.
Gandhi was calling it out, their own traditions, how hypocrisy is not good. And he got in trouble for that because that's how he was. He will speak his mind. But Morgan and I talked about, I said, maybe I want us to think whether he should have permitted the cow slaughter. Maybe would have saved millions of cows
Yeah.
each year. What do you think, Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the major questions I had is with the first two examples, the euthanasia and the killing of rabid dogs, they seem very in alignment with contemporary animal ethics, but this last example, it's just so complex.
Mhm.
It's really hard to determine whether we should prioritize religious freedom and the nonviolence of that versus nonviolence towards animals.
And so let's delve into a little bit more of that. Tell me more about the contemporary views and how they align or don't align with Gandhi's philosophies and the Jain and Hindu Dharma.
Yeah, so I would say concerning the first example of euthanizing the suffering calf, a lot of modern animal rights activists would consider that the correct choice. They would say that that's the empathetic, compassionate decision is to end the life. Um, Mostly because within contemporary euthanasia conversations, there's a distinguished uh, or distinction between medical euthanasia, which is considered necessary, versus convenience euthanasia, which is convenience. It's not necessary. It's unnecessary. And so Gandhi's euthanizing of the calf would be the former. It would be classified under medical euthanasia, whereas I don't think that he would condone um, just convenience euthanasia and doing it unnecessarily. It's only because it was suffering.
Right. How was the reception of your presentation?
I think it was it really gave a lot of thought for people, food for thought. They're
Hmm.
saying you really. So most of the people were bringing all kind of positive views. Oh, this person has worked for animal ethics this way, but not really serious questions. What happens? What Gandhi brings us those questions, serious challenges. So, like Morgan said, in religion, no one is talking about animal ethics, that we should not do animal sacrifices. Generally, we don't. We let religious people do. I mean, in Islam, there are hundreds of millions of animals are slaughtered on Eid, the religious festival all over the world. But animal ethicists don't talk about that.
Hmm.
So I think the way Gandhi is bringing it is really challenging us to their own religious people, not to outsider. He's not challenging Islam because it's not his religion. He
Right.
always thinks that challenge has to be come from within,
Hmm.
from their own cultures, their own traditions. So he's asking those questions. So it could have been that Indians who are not non-Muslim Indians would have come and said, okay, if you want to ban cow slaughter, let's ban slaughter for all animals. Let's be all vegetarians. And he would have gone for that.
Mhm.
But they didn't go there, right? So I think, and whole India is not vegetarian, right? There are 35% Indians are vegetarians or Hindus so I think the point is that he is really saying that violence is not simply not eating animal. Violence is not simply not making choices that are considered overtly
Mhm.
nonviolent. But nonviolence is how we treat the animal, how we treat. We can't even treat our people such a good way. So how do we? So he asked these challenging questions. He asked people to take those ethical stances, ethical positions, which require sacrifice. And I think we had a cow in our house, and our cow quit giving milk, and we kept the cow. We didn't put him to a slaughterhouse. We just said, okay, when she dies, she dies. So I think though then we give it to an ashram where also she was safe but I don't know what happened after that. How long you keep the animal? How do you keep the animal?
Yeah.
All these practical questions has to be considered, not through emotions because my religion said so. So I can leave it in your yard, it's okay. So I think that's kind of questions. He was not against, he really was for protecting the cow, but he was at the same time was saying, let's own up to it. Are we able to protect the cow?
And Morgan, did you find any parallels or differences in the United States, how we think about things in this day and age?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the major critiques people have towards Jainism and their treatment of animals is whether or not it's almost anthropocentric because it talks about ideals of karma and rebirth, and whether or not our decision to not harm animals is because it would be bad for us. It's hurting us in a way because we're all interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the argument for rebirth is that maybe an animal that you're currently harming was your mom in a past life, that it's her reincarnated now and you'd be harming someone connected to you. So is that still prioritizing humans versus just thinking outside of ourselves towards the animals? But I know Veena has a great perspective on why Jainism isn't anthropocentric.
Yeah, they're also thinking about animals' karma. So a
Mhm.
lot of people don't think about that. All the Western scholars who are studying Jainism, they say, well, it's an anthropocentric perspective. You're doing because my bad karma will happen if I let this cow die.
Can you define that term, anthropocentric?
Anthropocentric is focus on the human, privileging human, not rather than animals.
Yeah,
So anthrop, human centric.
gotcha.
So the idea is that you are not doing because I'm worrying about my karma. And Gandhi is willing to take his bad karma for himself, or even if it meant to be, to serve, help others. So he's ready to get protests, he's ready. So that's a fascinating point about, so many thinkers were there, so many figures that were talked about or discussed in the conference. But Gandhi presents a very unique perspective.
Yeah.
It makes it complicated because life is complicated.
Well, we are out of time, so thank you very much, Morgan and Dr. Veena Howard, for joining us today. Artful Discourse is a production of the College of Arts and Humanities at California State University, Fresno. The Dean is Dr. Honora Chapman. This program is written, directed, and produced by me, Benjamin Kirk, the college's communication specialist. The theme song for Artful Discourse is Maiden Voyage by Fresno State music professor Benjamin Boone from his album, Joy. More information about his music can be found at benjaminboone.com. Special thanks to KFSR and FSR Underground General Manager Julie Lindahl for making this show possible. You can learn more about the College of Arts and Humanities and find an archive of our shows at our website, cah.fresnostate.edu, or on our blog, fresnostatecah.com.